All right, so here we are at our last panel of the day, and we're billing it as the Fireside Chat. So you can definitely say that you've spent a good rainy day. You've spent it well on a rainy day. So the Fireside Chat, I'd like to introduce our speakers as they come out, is going to discuss the untethered in practice, what worked and what didn't. So please welcome Dr. Andrew McAfee, the Principal Research Scientist at MIT at the Center for Digital Business. And Liz Roche, Global Strategist with Hewlett-Packard, and Gajen Kandiah, Senior Vice President with Cognizant, to talk about the untethered in practice, what worked and what didn't.
Good.
Thank you.
Chris, thank you very much. And I think to start off our last session of the day, I'd like to give a round of applause to Chris and all of his colleagues who worked so hard to make the 2012 MIT CIO Symposium the event that it is. I get a lot out of it every year. So everyone, thank you very much. We certainly want to thank our panelists, and we'll do that at the end. But again, at the start, I want to thank those of us who are hardy enough to stick around for an entire day of sessions and panels and discussions about what technology is doing to the business world. I don't know about you all, but by this point in a day like this, my brain is always just way more than full, and I'm usually going to go, I'm looking for a cocktail by 5:30. So we panelists really appreciate the hardy core who stuck around to the bitter end. As a reward, we're going to have a fireside chat on the kind of New England day that seems to beg for a fire. We're going to have a fireside chat. I feel very lucky that we have two panelists who have kind of, I think, a fantastic perspective, because they are in the advisory business, helping enterprises use technology to move to wherever it is that it's taking them. And the more that I look around, the more convinced I become that we are at, I think it's a real inflection point in the economy, in what companies are and what they do. I believe that is largely driven by technology. I'm the most biased person in the world because I study technology for a living, but other people that I talk to feel like there's something fairly interesting and profound taking place. I love to learn about what's easy and what's difficult for enterprises as they confront technology's challenges and opportunities. So with Gajen and Liz here, we have this fantastic opportunity to talk about that at the end of the day. All I want to do is tee up a few questions for them. We're going to have a chat for, I would call it half hour or a bit less, and then we're going to wind out the 2012 CIO Symposium, at least the Kresge portion of it, by having a discussion among the audience. So as you can tell, we've got a couple microphones here. If anything that we say sparks anything for you, come down, let's have a discussion about it at the end. So, Liz and Gajen, I want to start by just asking for your impressions about the journeys that you're seeing as you're watching and helping enterprises, and I would imagine primarily medium-sized to big enterprises, use technology to do things differently. Tell us what impressions occur to you, or how you and your colleagues are perceiving this journey toward the untethered enterprise. Liz, we're going to start with you.
Absolutely, and thank you. And thank you, everyone, for sticking around. I think that we'll consider ourselves successful as a panel if we can get you talking to us. We were saying earlier
and remaining awake until 6:15. We have goals.
We know we stand between you and drinks, but if you hear something that is just not resonating, we want to hear about it. So I think, Andy, in terms of the journey, what I'm seeing and what we're seeing at HP is a real focus on the infrastructure and the technology that's going to enable this next generation untethered environment. But it's no longer about planning the perfect, the most bulletproof environment. We're seeing a lot more tolerance for pilots, for start small and learn, for prototyping. Back in the application development days, we used to call this rapid application development. Things that'll let an organization add value to their business partners quickly without a huge investment. You know, the financial model with Untethered and with cloud is changing, right? IT is moving from making investments to, so businesses are no longer making investments, they're teeing up expenses. It's IT that are making the investments as opposed to expensing. So while providing this adequate financial balance, adding value very quickly, and really empowering business with this technology environment?
Gajen.
Thank you from me as well, and I'll second what Liz said, but diving right to answer the question, we've sort of seen a shift happen a couple of different ways. I think the first shift was, as having been a technologist myself, the initial shift was technologists wanting to do stuff with new technology, right? And we've all seen that, and businesses going, why? Why do I need to go through yet another transformation or yet another application development process? And interestingly enough, as more consumer devices or channels started to show up, namely things that start with an I, that shifted, right? And so what you started to see was businesses questioning IT about why do I not have this? And we kind of, within Cognizant, we kind of call it the morning after syndrome, right? Where consumers, business, and sort of normal consumers and B2B consumers, the night before, your experience is completely different. It's an iPhone, an iPad, you're watching a TV, you have 3 or 4 screens going at the same time, you all can relate to this. And everything is at your fingertips, right? You're collaborating, you're on Facebook, maybe you're not. But in essence, you're sort of fully engaged in what you're doing. You show up at work the next morning, and you're fully tethered to everything, right? You have a phone that's plugged in, right? You have a computer that represents a mainframe screen or maybe a Windows app of some form, and you can't leave your desk to do your work, right? Whereas here you've gone from a previous night experience, which was phenomenal, and you really enjoyed it, to a morning after experience, which really, really, is bad.
You can go ahead and say it. You can say that it sucks if it sucks.
Yeah, that's where I was going with it. And so I think that has driven a push back towards IT to say, how are you going to improve this environment that I'm working in?
Now, how are you seeing IT respond to that push? Because I think we all sense it, but in a lot of cases, I could imagine a response being indifference, resistance, excuse-making, stalling. We've observed these things before. What's happening now?
All of the above,
and then some.
And then some, but but you are starting to see IT organizations, some of them jumping in, as Liz was talking, just sort of starting with pilots, and let's do something to show you what is the art of the possible, if you will. But then there are others who are looking for an anchor point. Sort of where are we headed, right? Where are you, the line of business, headed? And how can we enable that, right? Because it's not a simple pilot to something that's fully production ready, because it's an enterprise level issue. Because once they get going, it becomes an enterprise level issue. What's the architecture? What tools do I want to select? What platforms do I want to play in? What channels do I want to have? Do I want to control what phones you use? Even at Cognizant, right? iPhones were the hardest thing to get going, but today it's like whatever you want, right? We'll support it. But it used to be just, only these prescribed phones were available for use. So that's sort of the tactical view of it. Okay. But broadly speaking, we're starting to see 2 things happen. One is IT playing a far more integral role with the business.
Yep.
In helping shape that agenda, sort of we call it future of work. But,
are we sure about that? Because as long as I've been studying IT, we've been kind of knocking on the door of the business side and going, we should be partners in shaping the agenda. And the business side has been, frankly, patting us on the head and telling us to make sure the network stays up.
Yes and no. So I'll give you an example, right? So think of life sciences, and if you think about clinical research, the R&D side of life sciences. If you think of everything from clinical data to pharmacovigilance to clinical monitoring, right? That entire process today can be completely transformed using this new set of technologies. Yep. And business can envision it, but as you get deeper into an enterprise solution, you can't do it without IT involved. And so they bring the partner along, we get involved, but certainly when you think about virtualizing your entire R&D process, IT has a role to play. It's not like IT is leading the business there. I think the business is getting there and then pulling IT along in the ones that we're seeing.
At one of the earlier panel discussions, one of the CIOs was saying that there's probably a better relationship between business and IT than we give ourselves credit for. That said, we're still not seeing this true business seat at the table where, IT has moved beyond wanting to run IT like a business, right? We keep hearing people talk about it. I saw some books out there, run IT like a business. Well, to us, it's not about running IT like a business. It's about running the business with IT, where you don't have a unit within a business wanting to be like a business. You have all the units working together to provide value to customers.
So, ballpark, what % of the enterprises that you work with get that to any real extent?
Oh, I'd say less than half.
Less than half.
Less than half. Now, that's not to say that there aren't good relationships and
Okay.
that business and IT aren't aligned. Because what I'm talking about is not necessarily alignment. What I'm talking about is really having IT participate at the business planning table as a strategic enabler. And that's what an untethered environment lets us do. If IT is a strategic enabler, it may be accepting that I'm going to set up a cloud infrastructure and I'm going to understand that there's a temptation for my business units to create shadow IT because they need to be agile. In fact, I worked with a retail customer not too long ago that was supporting these pop-up sales. Have you guys seen these online? You're getting emails saying if you purchase between 10 and 12, you're going to get 40% off. Well, that's about load balancing, right? But if I've let this business unit, and this is what happened, the business unit had completely outsourced their marketing application to a cloud provider. The cloud provider is watching overall performance, but not necessarily performance of this one application for this one client. Whereas if people were doing it in-house, corporate IT would have known that there was a big deal going on. People would have been sitting staring at the servers, really monitoring to make sure performance was going appropriately. And in this new world, you get IT teaching shadow IT how to handle that. If we're going to really empower the business with IT, we're going to accept that we're going to have this shadow team, and we're going to treat them as appropriate, and we're going to help them understand what they need to do to support the business. Increasing tolerance for that.
Increasing tolerance.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound right?
I think that sounds right. I do believe that IT does get a bad rap, only because, with again using similar example of sort of virtualizing monitoring in life sciences, the savings value is 60, 70, 80%, right? If the line of business leader went to IT and said, help me save 70, 80%, IT couldn't do that because it's a fundamental business transformation. Okay. I think what the opportunity, we call it the SMAC stack, right? So social, mobile, collaborative, right? Right? Yeah, I know it's been used in other ways as well, but I'll stay with what I know. But I think it enables more fundamental changes to the business. And by that I mean the business, the process, the underpinning technology, and then the underlying commercial construct in which you can deliver that service. And so to expect just IT to come up with that, I think is just asking too much, because IT just doesn't understand the business at that depth.
Okay. I had kind of a weird experience a while back. I got invited to talk to a group of the senior innovation officers or people responsible for innovation at some very large enterprises, primarily American ones, companies we've all heard of. And we had the dinner the night before the day-long session, and after a couple glasses of wine, the thing turned into a group therapy session about how much everyone hated their IT departments. And I didn't try to see the discussion, but I was amazed and kind of dismayed by it, because they were like, your laptops boot up in 3 minutes? I would kill for 3 minutes. Mine take 5. And they would and it turned into this weird gripe fest about, honestly, to them, and I'm not trying to slander the audience here, but to them, I got the super strong impression that they perceived their technology professionals as people who were trying very hard to get in the way of what they were trying to do with the business. So my question to the panel is, what's it going to take to change that?
Well, I'll start, because I think that's a tough road to hoe, because so much of it is cultural, right? And I think that's a key mistake that organizations make when they're talking about untethered.
All right, I'm going to push back on that because if I'm the
ahead.
millennial walking into one of those companies, I'm going to say, no, no, no. A laptop that takes 3.5 minutes to boot up is not cultural. That's a problem. Let me use my iPad, which boots up immediately. Let me use my Sunday night technologies, not my Monday morning ones.
Exactly. So where I was actually going with that is it's cultural. It's endemic in IT to want to control. And what it's going to take to get IT to loosen that control is to acknowledge that we're all now prosumers, right? Professional consumers. And it's an environment of BYOD, bring your own device. And unless we as IT professionals can provide the self-service necessary to support BYOD, we don't have to support the device, but we have to provide self-service so that the devices can get on the network, so that they can be secure, so that if I'm willing to pony up the bucks for an iPhone, an iPad, a touchpad if we still made them,
Wow.
And let's not go there.
It is kind of unvarnished here at the end of the day.
And I haven't even had wine yet. But that my IT organization has to understand that that is what's going to happen, and they can't stop it. But it's cultural to move beyond that.
Okay, so now I'm going to channel the CIO of one of these enterprises who says, that's all well and good. The instant someone leaves a device behind that's got data on it, the instant there's a security breach, the instant someone thinks that we violated HIPAA because it's not the right kind of device, my neck is on the chopping block, not that millennials. I have to, my job is to maintain some flavors of control in this enterprise.
And again, so let me just jump in with the cultural thing, because governance is another thing people get wrong. They don't want to address the idea that governance is an integral part of your cloud service strategy. And one of the things that I love to talk about is, if you're going to procure services from a service provider such as HP or Cognizant, don't be a knucklehead client. Be a good client. Let us help you get the most for your money. And one of those things is believe us.
That's brave advice, because I hear lots of people say, please be a knucklehead
client. I know, right?
We really like that.
Please believe us when we tell you that governance and a new architectural model and a new security model are all important, but it's that the softer side of things, that governance, that's going to let you as a CIO stay out of jail.
Does this sound right? Is it a cultural, a mindset change that's going to allow us to have Sunday night technologies on Monday morning?
See, I don't think you'll have Sunday night on Monday morning. Right?
We're not going to get there?
I don't think that's going to happen for the reasons that you were just talking about. Right? I think we are governed by, as an enterprise, you're governed by different rules, regulations. However, I do think that you can take the concepts of what you appreciate on Sunday night, whether it be collaboration or socialization or whatever it might be, and apply it to your Monday morning experience in an untethered manner, right? So I agree that devices, you should be able to bring your own device, but it needs to work within the constructs of an enterprise, security policy, and enterprise,
And are we in the world now where that's doable?
Not until IT comes to play.
Okay.
Right? I think IT still does, in terms of working with IT, it's still a challenge, right? In that, you want innovation, but then your first question is, give me 7 references for it.
Yeah.
I can't, right? In some cases, I'll come to you with a concept, and I'm willing to work with you on a concept and collaborate with you and go to the business with you with a solution. But as IT, we've been trained to come with tried and true technologies, proven solutions, and it becomes an issue.
Isn't that because we're afraid to take risks? We're not rewarded, and in fact, we're punished for making a mistake. This whole cultural shift that needs to include a tolerance for risk and mistakes, right?
It is. But then the business goes off and does it with someone else, right? Hence, we're in business, right? So,
and I've rescued a lot of those.
airline companies come to you and say, hey, look, I have my best customers in a box with me for 10, 12, 15, 17 hours. I do 0 business with them other than selling them the ticket, right? And in fact, the rest of the experience kind of shitty. So, how do I improve that, right? Now, they don't go to IT for that question, right? And they come to a partner, or they, and I don't know if that bridge is quite at the place where it can can be crossed between IT and the business.
And you know what, my experience with my clients, and I was talking to some of my colleagues before I came here, polling them as well, our experience is that implementing cloud or some kind of untethered environment as a reaction to being dissatisfied with corporate IT is really not a good reason to get into this kind of a relationship. And any good service provider should be helping you understand that don't jump into this because you're dissatisfied with corporate IT. Corporate IT is going to have best practices that they're going to want to implement, and there's just no way around it. There's no way around a security model. There's no way around firewalls. There's no way around data protection, backup, all that kind of stuff. It just is. And dissatisfaction with corporate IT may be great business for us, but we need to come to the table together. Your service provider, your corporate IT group, and your business units that are looking to procure these services, because it needs to be a three-legged stool, and with only two of those legs, you're fundamentally unbalanced.
And I think it's a journey. It's not a sprint. And I think we've gone from divergent strategies between businesses and IT to now parallel strategies, in my view, right? It's not convergent yet. Right? Okay. It's not like they're at a point where they come to you together. However, in an enterprise, any sort of mid to large scale enterprise, I think that in order to truly benefit from the value of these emerging technologies, or even the technologies we have at our fingertips today, it's going to require alignment.
We hear a lot about skills gaps and skills mismatches these days. Is that a real problem? And if so, where do you all see the biggest skill gaps among the enterprises that you work with?
So I'm actually doing a presentation at HP Discover, so here's a little self-promotion. Week after next in Las Vegas, I'm talking about the top 10 things keeping CIOs up at night. Mm-hmm. And as I've been talking to folks, and I've been talking to you guys all day, one of the skills gaps is in business skills and business analyst, business IT skills. And I gotta say, this really shocked me, because back when I was still coming...
We still don't have enough geeks that speak suit, and we still don't have enough suits that speak geek. How can this be the case? We've been yelling this from the rooftops.
For 20 years. My first job was...
Are we just a little slow? Like, why is this not happening?
I know. I think it's because that combination in people is hard to find. We want to be super technical because somehow that makes us credible, or we want to be super business oriented and leave the geek speak to the geeks. I wish I had a better answer for that, because I keep seeing this on lists year after year. And IDC did some research, and this was, I forget if it was 5 or 6, but it was right up there. Hiring, finding this unique skill set, and I think it becomes even more important as we move into this untethered, prosumer, empowered world where you're doing your own IT support. You are IT. Mm-hmm. When you go to an app store and you download an IT in 20 seconds and it provides a business process, you're supporting yourself.
Skills gaps, what do you see?
I just don't think we graduate enough of it, right? I mean, that's part of the problem, because of a lot of what's been going on for economic or other reasons, there's not a lot of technology graduates. I mean, yes, MIT and there's other schools that are graduating them, but relative to what organizations need in terms of technology firepower, I think there's a gap. Secondly,
I hear this over and over, and it completely blows me away, because it's not like everyone else has a job these days. Yeah. And if you want gainful employment in a career, technology continues to be a comparatively good place. I mean, is what we do really just not fun at all, so people don't want to do it?
No, I think it's fun.
But you could be a weirdo.
I think part of the problem is you don't find courses you can take, geek speak for suits.
So you're turning it back on me.
Suit speak for geeks. Can't you please help?
But, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I was just going to finish up by saying I think that also in organizations, when you're neither fish nor fowl, it's hard to say, I am a lawyer, I am a doctor, I'm a business analyst. What exactly does that mean? And in an organization, it's sort of hard to find a place. You're a sales rep within a business, selling IT to your line of business. You're a customer service rep, serving customers internal customers in a line of business. It's hard to quantify, it's hard to measure, it's hard for people to sort of see themselves. So we tend to groom people into these roles rather than graduate them, and it would be very, very helpful to see more and more business schools and more technology programs having these kinds of tracks that you can study.
Okay.
Next question.
Yes.
Yes.
How big is the performance gap between an enterprise that gets it, that gets the role of technology and enabling and accelerating what the company's trying to do, versus a company that doesn't get it, or a company that's just kind of middling along? How big is that performance gap?
What kind of performance are we talking about?
Business performance, market performance.
You know, interesting. I can maybe, if I took it one level more granular, right? In healthcare, right? I would say it is the difference between a $5 per person per month charge for a claim to $12 a claim.
That adds up.
That adds up very quickly, right? Especially when you're thinking about, you know, millions of claims being processed in some of these large organizations, right? So just within healthcare, if you draw the spectrum that wide, and even at $5, if you look at it through our lens, you'll say, look, you're still not optimized, right? You know,
So how low could that number be?
You can get down to $1 or less.
Okay, so so if you do that, you've just described a factor of 12 range.
Potentially, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, or in life sciences, you can say the cost per study, and there's hundreds of thousands of studies that a company could run in a given drug or across multiple drugs. You are looking at, you know, $1 million a study versus $6 to $7 million a study.
And again, that adds up.
And you know, and some people will argue saying, hey, but it depends on the type of study, the stage of the study, et cetera. But I'm just sort of averaging it out, saying, look, you know, it adds up, right? So there are now situations where you can walk in and say, look, you know, over a period of 5 years, I can get you from 5 to 1 in claims, right?
Yep.
But I don't do that through just optimizing process and optimizing technology. It's fundamentally reshaping how you do it.
So in other words, taking it and putting it in Bangalore is not going to get you from 5 to 1.
It's not about Bangalore or Chennai or China, you know, Shanghai or anything like that. I think that whole era, in my mind, outsourcing for the sake of outsourcing, the labor arbitrage, I think that's behind us.
Does that sound right?
That sounds absolutely right.
Yeah.
We're seeing that with our clients every day. Every day. While certainly labor arbitrage is a part of every resourcing model, that is not the panacea that people thought it would be or it could be.
We have wage increases too.
Yeah, and without changing...
Talent is expensive all over.
Yeah, without changing your business processes to streamline and optimize and whatever sort of other fun consultant words we can come up with, you know, those costs creep right back up.
The reason I asked that question is Mark Andreessen, Netscape, now Andreessen Horowitz, wrote a really interesting op-ed in the Journal maybe a couple months back, where he basically said, hey, rest of the economy, we're coming for you. Me, my partners in Silicon Valley, the companies that we invest in, we look out across the economy and across different industries, and we see you falling so far short of what you could be using technology to do, and to a bloodthirsty venture capitalist, that's just such ripe territory. So he's investing in companies that are going to go out, and I'll use my colleague Craig Christensen's term, just disrupt the heck out of all these mainline industries. So the reason I ask is if the performance gaps are on the order of an order of magnitude, you know, a factor of 12, Andreessen is right, and there's a whole lot of disruption coming.
Absolutely right, because you know you can either, if you're a healthcare company, you can either consider, you know, implementing an entirely new membership claims processing solution, which could run you in the tens to hundreds of millions of dollars, and again you're going to build it for some volume that you expect, or you can go to a company that has a claims as a service engine and outsource it for $1 a claim.
Okay.
Right, and that's the new commercial construct that's flowing in. That this, you know, business process as a service construct. So what happens is, you know, now which one do you want to do? You know, do you want to go spend the money with, you know, whoever the ERP vendor is, and then on top of that do all the customization, et cetera, or do you want to look for what's the next generation model that's coming up? And so you see a lot of investment going into the SaaS models or the BPaaS models. And I think that's what's starting to emerge as a new trend, if you will.
I want to ask our panelists one final question, and then let's throw it open for a discussion. Last question is, tell us where the untethered enterprise is going to be, not super long term, but let's say 3 to 5 years out, so realistic near term, how is the enterprise going to be different as a result of this technology toolkit that we have than it is today?
So at HP, we're really all about IT, providing IT as a service, and getting to a point where everybody's on all the time, 24/7, through whatever device makes the most sense at the time. Now, is this meaning everybody's working all the time? No, it means that as prosumers, we're working at home, we are doing personal stuff at work, and we're providing much more integrated support both for our lives as well as for our companies and our jobs. And I think that the untethered enterprise is absolutely required to get there.
Yep.
Yeah, I think we are certainly headed in that direction. I think this is another sort of cliche term, sort of focus on core business, right? I think that new technologies have actually made customers question what is really core.
Okay.
I think that you'll see increasingly enterprises focusing on the customer, their customer base, and how to deliver quick, agile solutions to those customers for the problems that they may be facing, or deliver products that are appropriate for that customer, so more customization, and less so invested in the back office and the middle office. That they would look to IT as a service or process as a service to truly become an integrator of a series of capabilities in the middle and back office to be able to deliver a solution that is appropriate at the right time for their consumer. However they may define that consumer. So in healthcare, it may be about claims. In life sciences, it's what we talked about in terms of R&D, or even on the sales and marketing. Or you could even go into insurance and look at the underwriting process and completely reframe that, right? So I think in each industry by process, you're starting to see customers truly look at not just IT, but the process and the IT together, and look at the value it derives when you put those together, and hence become more agile.
So let's open this up for questions, and keeping in mind that the soul of a great question is brevity.
That's a very polite way of putting it.
Yeah. However, you should be actually asking questions as opposed to just hanging out.
Come on.
Oh.
Hi, so Andy,
Hi, Irving.
Irving Bladowski-Berger, and I'm a fellow at the Center of Digital Business. So let me ask a potentially naive question, which is...
I think the last naive question you asked was about 45 years ago,
well,
but go ahead.
Which is that we are bemoaning that we cannot link Sunday evening technologies on Monday morning to the back-end infrastructures. There has to be innovative solutions for that, whether it is that the objects that come down to the Sunday evening stuff disappear when you are outside a building. I don't know what the answers are, but it's very difficult to think that there aren't great answers that let you have your cake and eat it too.
Okay.
So what do you all think? Was that brief enough?
That was very good.
Yes. A fine question.
So I think what we're talking about is not necessarily the physical infrastructure to connect the Sunday night and the Monday morning technologies. It's more about letting the Monday morning technologies function as Sunday night and vice versa. So it's not really the technical challenge, because the technical challenge is I mean, you're right, it's doable. I was going to say it's easy. I'm not going to suggest that it's easy, but I think that it's implementing it in a way that's manageable, that's non-intrusive, that gives people control at the right time. That's the challenge. And you know what? I know he kind of called BS on me when I brought up the cultural thing, but I'm going to say it again. I think there's a whole cultural shift that needs to go on around IT relinquishing control, or some measure of control.
Does that sound right?
Seems to be, yeah, I go with
What she said.
what she said.
Hey, Todd. These are all friendly fire questions so far.
Business, serial entrepreneur. So I'm going to really extend on the same theme, and it reminds me of a class that Hasso Plattner, co-CEO of SAP, taught at Stanford. And it was a class in user interface, which certainly seems a little ironic if you think of SAP software. And one of his students, pointed out the irony.
He was teaching that course?
He was teaching a course in user interface. And one of his students, being a creature of Silicon Valley, kind of pointed out the irony and said, why is SAP software not strong in user interface? He used stronger language than that, was basically the question. And his answer was, it's not for you. And I think, so that's, to me, really my fundamental question. These large enterprise systems have not been for the individual employee and the individual consumer. As we bring in these trends of consumerization for outside, where we want access to little bits of them, will the world fundamentally change and it'll all be the work days of the world? Or will we still have these enormous mainframe beasts that we use little edge applications to touch?
I don't think you'll see anything that clean, right? I think there's going to be a amalgamation of the mainframe apps as well as the sort of the apps, if you will, for lack of a better way of describing it. But I think companies need to truly start to think of this, and at least we do, in terms of horizons. We have Horizon 1 businesses, Horizon 2 businesses, and Horizon 3 businesses. Horizon 1 is stuff you do today. It's your bread and butter. You churn the money out of that business. Horizon 2 is your emerging businesses, right? For us, Horizon 2 happens to be BPO, infrastructure services, things like that. And then Horizon 3 is what's next. What's new? How do I take these technologies I'm getting, this smack stack, and start to implement it in the context of the business that I'm in and the customers I want to serve? And I think you get there over time, right? But ultimately, there's always going to be apps that require the processing capability of a mainframe, and when you get deeper into some of the more process, heavy industries. But that aside, I do think there is a place for these different horizons to exist, and they'll continue to move downstream. And I always think of these horizons as sort of an escalator going down, right? As something hits the Horizon 3, it's sort of already moving to Horizon 2, down to Horizon 1. But conceptually, that's what we would advise customers start to do, and frankly, we have started to do that ourselves.
And just very quickly, I don't think the mainframe is ever going away. I think it's going to be a part of the IT environment for as long as we can forecast. And I think we just have to accept it, live with it, and understand that it's really about how far forward can you bring that application to the user.
But for God's sake, let's at least put a web wrapper on the mainframe and have it not suck so much.
It's going to suck forever.
No,
we just have to accept it.
No, that's my point. It does not have to. I had this great opportunity Sunday night. I went to an event where Walter Isaacson talked about his Steve Jobs biography, and he just did a lovely job. And I got the chance to be in the audience and ask a question afterward. And what I asked Walter was, are you optimistic that the tech industry is not going to backslide into the kinds of products it was giving us before Steve Jobs and Apple, into these kinds of products that, Todd, like you say, just displayed something between indifference and contempt for the people who were actually going to use them, and required them to have advanced CS degrees and be kind of car mechanics in their spare time to actually use the applications and the technologies. And I think Isaacson's answer was kind of guardedly optimistic. It feels to him, and I think to me, like what Jobs and a few other people in the tech industry have done, is show us a world where technology can really delight us, where it feels like something that's welcoming to a human being. I hope to God we don't backslide too far, but inside the enterprise, I fail to see a single good reason for us to have to deal with technologies that treat us with indifference or contempt.
That's exactly right. The magic is abstracting that away from the user and keeping it where it should be, which is in the closet processing.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so don't make me work with poorly designed green screens for the rest of my career. That seems silly.
The mainframe is an enormously high-powered processor, and I think we need to treat it like that. There's enough technology around today to abstract all that away from the user.
Makes sense.
I'll just say that one of the things I did, that's not my question, but I retain at IBM was portalized, green screen was gone. So it can be done. It's not that hard, really. And that's been an eon, age-old system at IBM. My name is Linda Pelikuthis. My question, I want to bring you back to the topic you were discussing earlier, human capital, quality of human capital. One of the things that I hear from my community is that there's always this trip when you get to introducing yourself to companies like yours. And it's the location trip, where you want people with these skills that you say are hard to find, but then you want them in DC, or you want them in some other, is there a comment, please, on what your feelings are about the really untethering your organization to accept people living where they want to live, but practicing their practice, practicing their craft for you for the benefit of your organization?
Well, I'll start with that because as a consulting organization, we have to go where our clients are, and we provide services that our clients want from us. So in terms of our co-location ideas, an HP employee can live anywhere. I haven't lived in the same city as a boss or even an office in years. But it is critical, we always put the customer at the center of our design of anything. So if it's critical to provide a resource on site or resources via video or whatever the customer wants to meet that particular need. So I would say, to answer your question specifically, it's really not about what HP wants, it's about what our customers want.
I just sort of extend that a little bit. I think if you're, there are two types of, fundamentally two types of engagement models we have within Cognizant. One is sort of your customer-facing model, and that I agree with Liz. You have to be in front of the customer. The other one is your solutions delivery model, right? Where do your delivery centers exist? And in the purely IT days, right, there used to be these massive delivery centers, ODCs as you would call them, that are located in various parts of the world, including the US. But increasingly, though, as we get into more specialized capabilities, like case management in healthcare or critical care, things like that. What we're starting to see is nurses, for instance, or doctors, like working from where they are. They like working from home. They like to work part-time, et cetera. And so we're actually having to build an infrastructure. We call it Cognizant 2.0, which in essence enables working virtually, right? So ultimately what we want to bring to our customers is the best skill possible at the best price possible, And when you get into sort of these specialty skills of medicine and clinical skills, and I'm sure there's others like legal as well, that you have to start to do what you're talking about. So I think it's coming. I think when it was purely IT, it was a little bit harder to get there. But now user experience, as we've been talking, that's a massively important skill. And it's not like you can put somebody on a plane to go to your delivery center. It just doesn't happen. So we are being forced to think outside the box as well in terms of how we create an environment where people can work in a virtual manner and still be a part of the organization.
Sir, it falls to you to ask the last question.
Great. Well, I'm Charlie Best.
Of the 2012 CIO Symposium. No pressure.
It's Hewlett-Packard. And when I talk to people about strategic planning, even though we heard this morning we don't need to do strategic planning, I usually walk them through a concept of scarcity and abundance. And almost all the IT systems that are in production today were based on a scarcity model. And yet now we are continuously talking about the abundance of capabilities that cloud computing and networking and all these other kinds of things provide. What do you think are the core scarce items that we need to plan for in the coming decade?
I'll let you go with that one.
Wow. Ask that question again. I'm sorry, I'm not entirely sure.
Let me take a crack at it while our panelists are frantically spinning their wheels. And I'll put it in a little bit different term, but I think I hear what you're saying. We're in this world of big data is not just hype. I think all of us believe that it's a real phenomenon. Abundance is the term you use, like a whole lot of stuff. So the amount of stuff, especially digital stuff out there, is just not the constraint anymore. To my eyes, what is the constraint? And it's no longer, I don't even think it's the constraint anymore in an era of Watson, for example, to be able to extract valuable information from these massive reams of data, for example. So the ability to extract good stuff from this abundance is also progressing by leaps and bounds. What's not progressing, and where I think the bottleneck is and will continue to be, is knowing what questions to ask, knowing what to prioritize, knowing what is going to be most valuable or most important to do next. I talked a while back with a guy who was running a company that does big data for the aviation industry. And they can make airports massively more efficient, because right now you've got crews who are waiting for planes and planes who are waiting for crews and on the tarmac. Big data can fix these problems. I'm pretty convinced of it. So a lot of the people who run around trying to make airports work better are going to be less necessary, because airports are going to be more productive places. I'm digging all this. And then he said something really interesting at the end of the conversation. He said, man, and we are trying to hire the people like crazy who know how O'Hare works, or MIA, or SFO. We're trying to hire these old school, non-technical airport geeks, the non-digital airport geeks, into our company. I said, why on earth would you be doing that? Big data gives you the answers to your questions. These guys are not data hounds. This is a mismatch. He said, you don't get it. Nobody knows better what will make O'Hare improve than that guy who spent 20 years trying to make O'Hare better. He knows what the priorities are. He knows if we could solve the following 6 problems, this airport would be a lot better. That insight, that knowledge is not going to come out of the data. It's going to come out of people with industry expertise. They just get some spontaneous, wow. So knowing what question that you want the data to answer is just going to be an even more important school. That gives some of us old dogs who are not data scientists some hope going forward. And I'm going to wind up my remarks with a great quote from Picasso, who said something that was both belittling and absolutely true. He said, computers are useless. They can only give you answers.
That's very good.
Very good.
I feel inspired.
Should we have a quote too to end?
No, I don't have a quote. I'm sorry. But I actually I wholeheartely agree with you in that even when you look at the types of people that we are looking to bring on board by industry, we're looking for operations claims folks, or of people that that have retired, right? Wow. To come back and help us really understand what is the core issue, right? In adjudication, right? How do I move upstream to make adjudication be far better, so that the claims processing is far smoother, or or in retail around sort of intelligent store management, right? The not just computers, but even the millennials, right? They have answers, but to your point, don't know what problem they're solving or what the question is. And so I truly believe that what we're trying to do is to bring together the experience with the talent that understands how these new capabilities come together, and integrating those to find the right solution. So,
yeah, agreed. What he said.
Great. I want to thank you. I want to thank you all for having the fortitude to stick through a long and fantastic CIO symposium. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.